11 sati i 30 minuta. Dame i gospodo, uvaženi gosti, dragi prijatelji, divna djeco, a posebno hvala dakako onima koji su putovali. Lijep pozdrav svima vama i srdačna dobrodošlica na konferenciju Pravo na život bez nasilja, koja je, evo čuli smo i u ovim medijskim izjavama, organizirana povodom obilježavanja Svjetskog dana djeteta u Bosni i Hercegovini. Puno izazova, što je i naša draga Ingrid rekla kad su u pitanju dječja prava i što je najteže dječji životi, posebno zadnjih sedmica, a već smo čuli da su naši današnji domaćini UNICEF u Bosni i Hercegovini, Ministarstvo za ljudska prava i izbjeglice u Vijeću ministara Bosne i Hercegovine i Vijeće za djecu Bosne i Hercegovine. Bosna i Hercegovina, dakle, evo ponovit ćemo još jednom, prije 30 godina potpisala je UN-ovu konvenciju o pravima djeteta i time, kao što se zna, preuzela obaveze za stvaranje boljih uvjeta za život svakog djeteta, unapređenje zakonodavnog okvira i redovno izvještavanje o sprovedbi konvencije u našoj zemlji. Posebna vrijednost ovogodišnje konferencije leži u činjenici da su njene teme predložila upravo djeca. I u okviru njih predstavit će i stanje i ključne probleme, kao i učestale oblike nasilja s kojima se suočavaju, kako unutar svojih zajednica, tako i unutar svojih
that they are faced by within their communities and their families. And unfortunately, the appointed officials from all levels of government, the legislative, the executive, during the panels, they will have the opportunity to reflect on what we'll hear from the excellent children's team. This will be also the opportunity to discuss the solutions to topics and to give a time frame to promise also to children, to ourselves, on continuous approach to this topic that each country's future relies on. We already said who are the organizers and the hosts, and it's now a pleasure to call on the heads of these institutions and the organizations to briefly, at the beginning of the conference, to talk to us. There is a lot of work ahead of us, I must say. Dr. Hurtić, Minister of Human Rights and Refugees in the Council of Ministers of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Dr. Hurtić, please have word. I will not bother children anymore. As you could see, they were not on time. Politicians were not on time. I will greet the friends from your organization, because it is your organization for the rights of the child. I wish you a lot of good I will not read this speech. You will hear from my friends who know a lot of these things. Ask them good questions with good principles. Ask me good questions. Come to my office, talk to us, and trust me, we have the future ahead of us of the beautiful Bosnia and Herzegovina. Remember all of our words. In 5, 10, 15 years, some of you will be politicians, and don't do what we do if you believe it's not right. Once again, thank you, all the politicians from the Federation, from the Republika Srpska, from the state level, deputy ministers, ombudsman, and I wish that next year we don't discuss the things that are such as killing children, violence of children, and all the bad things that are happening. And here is the Minister of Education of the Federation, Ms. Durakovic, who can do a lot so that you discuss it with the IT experts to discuss better opportunities for studying, to do your master's studies wherever you want, but to spend your knowledge here in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Once again, thank you. I have to go ahead to the airport. Children like you from Palestine, from Gaza, who have suffered a lot, some of them will be placed in Salakovac to make, together with our children, a delegation to visit them and to say that they are welcome to Bosnia and Herzegovina. These are from our citizens, they are relatives from our citizens, and to see the safety in our country. Thank you once again. Thanks to all the politicians who are here today. Hopefully this will be successful. Before the minister leaves, just one note. I just want to say that as for the conference, all the politicians were on time. They were not supposed to be here during the media. I had to correct it. I'm not praising politicians very often, but they are right on time. Thank you, Minister. Today, Dr. Ingrid MacDonald, residential. I have problems with saying this word, residential, also resistant, with a lot of resistance. So resident coordinator in Bosnia and Herzegovina, always in the right place, always where needed. Ingrid, please have a word.
Okay, so thank you again, and the Minister has left, but I'd also like to acknowledge his leadership. As well as I understand that we have ministers here from the entities, we have representatives from BiH district, from the institutions, parliamentarians, as well as, of course, UNICEF. Veronica, you and your team have done an amazing job in terms of bringing this together for World Children's Day, and also, of course, the Council of Children of BIH for hosting and organising this important gathering. I also want to acknowledge, I know we've got children here, I think it's from Tuzla, Zenica, Sarajevo, Mostar and Banja Luka, who are representing the voices of children across the country. This is really, really important. Really the fact that you're here today to bring those voices forward is exactly what World Children's Day is about. I think that as we heard 30 years ago, the Convention on the Rights of the Child was something that was committed to by Bosnia and Herzegovina, and today there's going to be discussion about the issues of legislation, not only in terms of how to change legislation or refine it, but also in terms of what needs to be done in terms of implementation. Because what we know that when it comes to areas such as parliamentarians know, there's a lot of work that can be done in terms of making a good piece of legislation, but what makes it really important is how is it implemented, and is the necessary resources and capacity there to ensure that that implementation is effective for the victims and the survivors and those that it is there to protect. And I think that's a very important area to discuss today, but also to really have the voices of young people and children looking at those solutions, because they know better than anybody what works for them and what will protect them. And so it's really important that their voices are what drives what is discussed today. As I said to the press statement, we are very, very concerned as the United Nations. I was in New York. I've just actually arrived back yesterday. The situation of the world when it comes to children is extremely difficult. We are seeing a level of armed conflict across the world that we have not seen since 1945. Children are by far one of the biggest groups of victims, together with women. And this is devastating in terms of rolling back the progress that has been made in terms of the world. But we also see different types of violence. Online violence. When I was a child growing up in New Zealand in a small town, I didn't have to worry that what I did as a child could be put online and there for the rest of my life. We see today that children face so much more they need to be so much more aware, and there needs to be so many more protections, because as we also see online bullying and the violence that goes with that, the repercussions in terms of suicide, in terms of what it does to affect the child moving forward in terms of their lives. These are really important issues, and it's something that is not only being struggled with in Bosnia and Herzegovina, it's being struggled with across the world. We are all dealing with that. The rise of artificial intelligence and how that affects all parts of society, but particularly children, who can often be very vulnerable to it, but also have the potential to come up with the solutions. So while artificial intelligence can be difficult, it can also provide really important solutions. And so I think these are some of the areas, when we talk about violence, it's not just about looking at the traditional areas, it's recognizing that we are in a rapidly evolving world, and we are seeing rapidly evolving threats that require solutions to those threats. So today is something that this location is very symbolic. It's the Parliamentary Assembly of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and really this is where the voice of the people, the voice of children should be heard and should inform the decisions that you make here today. So I think it's really impressive that the children themselves designated this as the theme that they want to discuss, and that this is something that all of those organisations here that have come through. I encourage that as we embark on this journey of introspection and action, that it's really important to keep in mind the profound impact our decisions can have on the lives of children that we aim to protect. Together we can contribute to the future where every child in Bosnia and Herzegovina enjoys the fundamental life to a right without violence. And I did want to also bring up the issue of climate. We see also that in terms of the climate emergency, a rapidly changing world around us. What we have seen in the United Nations is that the legislative changes, the policy changes, have often been driven by young people. If it wasn't for young people, we would not be where we are in terms of being able to move forward the solutions that we have today. And that they are driving a lot of the policy engagement and policy debate. So I thank you to all the young people here, because I'm sure some of you are involved in that. So actually having them involved in your efforts is a bonus. It's something that is not only about when we talk about the future, it's also about talking about the solutions of today. And I really want to thank everyone who is here from the schools, who have come here out of their time to provide your wisdom and your guidance in terms of what needs to be done. Thank you very much.
Hvala gospođo.
Thank you, Ms. McDonald. By nature of the things, especially important engagement in all of this discussion is on the UNICEF. Therefore, today we have Veronika Veščenko, who is acting representative of UNICEF, of the UNICEF in Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Your Excellencies, members of the Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, and children, it's my huge honor to address all of you today on behalf of UNICEF in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Every year on World Children's Day, we are full of joy, but unfortunately this year, we urgently address a growing crisis, the alarming surge in violence against children worldwide. The Convention on the Right of the Child emphasizes the obligations of every state to protect children from all forms of violence, neglect, and exploitation. As I already said, unfortunately in Bosnia and Herzegovina, we lack recent data. But even a data which we know we gathered a decade ago shows us a shockingly difficult reality. Over half of children aged 2 to 14 were subject to some form of violent discipline in Bosnia and Herzegovina, be it physical, psychological, by their parents or other adult household members. Intersection between violence against women and violence against children include common causes. Those are household dysfunction and stress. Those are alcohol and substance abuse and attitudes towards violence. UNICEF in Bosnia and Herzegovina is committed to action with all partners, with anybody who is ready to join this work to protect every child against violence. UNICEF has worked with partners to develop and adopt legislation to fortify the protection of children, including in the Republika Srpska family law in 2022, but also the child protection strategies in the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina and Republika Srpska in 2023-2027. Our efforts has extended as well to bolster the justice system, as many children are in conflict with the law, but also victims and witnesses of violence. They need child-friendly services in justice. Schools must be a safe place for any child. UNICEF has been supporting school-based violence prevention program targeting children at risk, and we reached 150,000 children annually, enhancing their access to education, but also social welfare and healthcare services. However, as you know, the challenges persist. More than 3,300 children annually find themselves before the court with justice system inadequately equipped to support and provide child-friendly services and equitable access for all these children. Almost 4,000 children are socially neglected, and they must have a proper support to them and their families. The social service workforce face resources constraints, and we are talking about human resources, but also budget to implement core services for children. In the face of these challenges, we must collectively work together, and I'd like to underline three main components which are crucial for us to find the solution. First one is support to strengthening preventive services for at-risk families. Second, strengthening children's access to child-friendly justice in civil and administrative proceedings for child victims and witnesses, and for children in contact with the law. Third is crucially important to increase public awareness on children's rights to health, to education, to protection. We have so many issues to tackle, but we must invest in children today so that we have future. Third, is very important to draft a new action plan for children as a practical roadmap to operationalize and guide the implementation of the necessary measures. Last but not least, data. In our fight against violence, one thing is crucial, is the gap we have in data generation. Without data, we won't be able to provide the solutions which work for children in this country. We will not know if investments that we make are efficient. We won't be able to adjust our policies for them to serve the children. Ladies and gentlemen, I won't speak at length today because we have children, and I will yield the floor to the voices that matter. Those are the voices of children. They will discuss with you today the various forms violence can take: physical, sexual, emotional abuse, and neglect. And unfortunately, these phenomena infiltrating homes and schools and communities and online platforms. Children will highlight the negative consequences, but it's so important for all of us to remember that violence has huge negative effect on development, but also it has substantial economic costs, social costs through lost potential and diminished productivity. Today, let the children speak and be heard. Let their words guide us towards the solutions which will work in Bosnia and Herzegovina. I extend an invitation to all of you to participate in this dialogue for us to find the solution so that every child is free from violence in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vashchenko. And now, after them, we are yet to hear Ms. Alexandra Vukovic, Deputy Chair of the Council for Children of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Please take the floor. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished participants in this conference, Your Excellencies, dear children, I have this great honor and pleasure to address you on behalf of the Council for Children of Bosnia and Herzegovina and point at the importance of this representative gathering called Right to Life Without Violence, organized on the occasion of the International Day of the Child. The United Nations have on today's date in 79 passed the Convention on the Rights of the Child that strongly promotes the rights of the child and binds all the countries in the world to provide to all children the right to happy childhood. And it's the base for effective national regulations that to provide for children and provides the obligations of institutions to take measures to realize and protect the rights of the child. Bosnia-Herzegovina has signed this convention in 1993 by inheriting the obligations from the former joint country. This convention has been part of the constitutional and legal system of Bosnia-Herzegovina as it is incorporated in the constitutions of both the entities and the constitution of Bosnia-Herzegovina, together with 15 more international legal instruments. All human beings are born equal and same in dignity and rights. And that's why I will mention the words of Dostoevsky, that no ideal in this world is worth a single tear of a child, and every child is the wealth and a gift. The right to life without violence is one of the basic rights of the children, and it is our duty to provide safe and supportive environment that provides them with the basic rights, including the right to life without violence and neglect. Unfortunately, violence against children is more and more apparent, especially in times of their adolescence. And there are many different forms of this violence: emotional, physical, sexual violence, neglect, and exploitation. In this sense, the international and national communities have to be more decisive in making and contributing to action plans and programs to protect children, especially those from minority or marginalized groups. However, all these proclaimed things are not easy to provide. It's confirmed by the fact that many children in the world burdened by wars, natural catastrophes, threats, and fears do not have happy childhood and certain future, nor conditions to learn and grow. Children of our country in not so distant past of the conflicts in the region have been through a very difficult time. Today, in every way and in all aspects, the awareness of human rights is raising. They are being presented and taught in education system. There are institutions being established to provide protection to children and mothers. All this needs to be continued with strengthening peace, living together and tolerance, and establishing a democratic state, all in the while at the same time at all occasions having the best interest of children at heart. The Council for Children was established as a technical cross-sectorial coordinating body with the Council of Ministers of Bosnia and Herzegovina that is responsible for promotion and protection of the rights of the child. The Council had been, to date, had been engaged in many activities aimed at improving position of children in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Rights of the child are being violated in our country, and they are still not effectively protected. And this can be seen even without listing examples from their environment. We want to present to the public that the Council of Children had faced these challenges, articulated them, sought for solutions, and by doing so confirmed the vision and mission and justified the reasons for its own establishment and existence. The Council has become an unavoidable address for many national entities aiming at protection of children's rights. Many of activities implemented by The Council for Children were implemented in cooperation with many partners. First of all, the UNICEF, and I am grateful to them for this. And there were other organizations that that were providing assistance. We want to thank the UN representing office here and UNICEF Bosnia Herzegovina and everybody else for everything that they had done and they're still doing for Bosnia Herzegovina, specifically in the field of the rights of the child. And I hope they will continue doing so in future. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you to all our speakers for these important messages. They will be topic of discussion in our panels today. We already said that the topics of the conference today were proposed by the children, and they will talk about this. And now let's give them a big applause of support to all the young people. Excellent young people whom you're going to meet today. And whenever you feel the urge, especially during their presentations, please give them a round of applause. And by doing so, support them. Do not hesitate to do so because they deserve it. And the ice will be broken by Sumeya Keramovic, a student of the first grade of Gazi Husrevbek Medresa, and Imran Bayraktarevic, student of the first grade of the Medresa Reis Jamaluddin Chaushevich from Tsazin. But before I give them the floor, a few remarks. When Sumeya and Imran finish their part of the job, they will announce their colleagues who will continue clarifying the problems, and each topic will be preceded by an educational video. There are 4 videos, and now I have the pleasure to give them to moderate. So the resident and the acting were the terms where I struggled. So it happens to people after so many years of experience. So do not worry if something similar happens to you. Distinguished excellencies, representatives of national and international institutions and organizations, dear peers, ladies and gentlemen, I wish us all happy International Day of the Child and welcome to our conference, Right to the Life Without Violence. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the General Assembly of the United Nations on November 20th, 1989 adopted the Convention on the Rights of the Child. Bosnia-Herzegovina adopted and ratified it in 1993. We are confident that all of you who are here today are familiar with the provisions of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. And my colleague and I will draw your attention to the things that are problematic for us, the children, where you who are involved in adoption of laws, where you can help us. Things that would be in the best interest of the children. According to the most recent census, children are 20% of the population. So why are we being neglected? Why the older ones do not ask us for our thoughts and our decisions? And why don't they invite us to work together with them on the promotion of the rights of the child? Truth be said, children were asked once when, with the support of the network of organization, they went directly before the UN committee to present a report on the status of the rights of the child in the UN. The BiH delegation took an active part in the process of reporting to the main body of the UN involved in the rights of the children. And the question now is, why are we not an active participants in creating policies and strategies in our own country, policies and strategies that would be in the best interest of the child? A cross overview of the situation shows that there are still lacking strategic documents about all the areas of protection of the rights of the child. Bosnia and Herzegovina does not have an umbrella document on the rights of the child. There is no such a document even in the entity levels, and the most recent action plan covers the period until 2018. There is no strategy for combating violence against children at any level of authority in Bosnia and Herzegovina. There is still no recommended law on children at the state level or at the entity level, so the level of Brčko district. There are many obstacles and many inconsistencies that are justified by lack of the money. It seems that there is money for everything but the children. I wish we had a law prohibiting corporal punishment of children in all environments. It's not easy to be without money and a potential victim of corporal punishment in all environments. One of the findings was also that children participation had not improved in spite of the fact that the previous action plans for children had included some measures to that end. Children with developmental difficulties are still denied equal access to all services of the system. Still, the children are most numerous victims of trafficking in humans, forced begging, or forced marriages. They are being sold by their own parents. We wish this conference today had some more positive things to say, that the government had done, that the authorities had done more to improve the position of the children, but unfortunately that is not the case. We decided to focus on violence against children and the necessary support to juvenile victims of violence in family and other environments. And we hope that this discussion today will be just the first step in the better cooperation between children and adults in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Now let's see the short video, and then I invite Amina Haskic and Dajla Topčić to open the session about peer violence and violence in school. Thank you.
So you read books, right? You're not escaping from classes. She speaks English. She read it in the books. It's the young girl that yells in the school. Yeah, it should be there. She cannot find a boyfriend. Look at her. She's just like a man, a boy. Why are you teasing her? So what's wrong if she's reading books? Stop doing that. You're all peers. You need to defend yourself. Why are you alone here? You're alone because you want to be good with everyone. No, she's not alone. And I think it's wonderful that she is a good pupil. How did you come to sing? Because you're not a good singer. You play piano? Yes, I play piano. Just continue doing that. What's wrong if she's sitting alone? Why are you teasing her? Look at your clothes. Have you ever heard of pink? Maybe have you heard of dresses? You look like a boy. I used to dress like this when I was a child, but I didn't behave like you. Please stop it. It is okay and normal to have a partner. What's your name? Lana? Have you been at any exhibition? What do you like to draw? Dear ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ayla Topčić. I'm coming from Zenica. I'm attending a primary school, Musa Čazim Čatić. Emina Haskić. I'm attending secondary school in Sarajevo. The report from 2019 treated bullying from 54 primary schools that submitted reports. In 22 were recorded physical bullying, and in 94 secondary schools, 32 reported and took some preventive measures of repetition of violence against children. Out of that number, 24 secondary schools stated that this was peer violence. 8 of them said that this was, there were cases of violence of adults against children. We need the legislation against violence of children and raising awareness of parents and wider public, and the physical punishment that leaves the consequences on children. We need school activities and out-of-school activities where we spend 50% of our time. We need psychologists in schools with whom we can discuss openly, who can recognize symptoms of violent, deviant behavior out of school. And if somebody has already been the victim of bullying, we need educational system and system of psychological and physical protection who care about us, who are not here just to evaluate our knowledge learned from books, but just to see our behavior changes and to take care of us. There are children where domestic situation is not good, where their home is not a safe place to live. If schools the pedagogical and educational system fails, then we are building up society which fail to do the prevention of violence against children, but to create a society of violence of adults. Violence has become normality, especially amongst youngsters in primary and secondary schools. Peer violence is the problem that we discuss after a tragedy occurs. Just the notion that each third child in Bosnia and Herzegovina is suffering some type of violence is a huge problem. If any individual is suffering violence, that should be reported. However, there is a problem here as well. Today, there is fear among individuals to report on any type of violence. Violence in school, I believe, is due to personal satisfaction and popularity in society, because violence is considered as normal occurrence. The violence leads to a normal pattern of behavior without considering that violence is bad. Also jealousy among peers, and the consequences are very bad, and they have huge influence on individuals. Frustration, fear, feeling loneliness, lack of self-confidence are just some of them. Parents are role models to their children. The responsibility is to them because they teach their children what is good and what is bad. However, the blame is not only on us. There is a lot of influence from the environment they live in and the system taking care of the children. It is important to educate children, parents, teachers, and other members of the communities on peer violence and violence in schools, the consequences and the ways of prevention. We need to create safe and supporting environment in schools and communities, and we need to instigate mutual respect. It is important to cooperate multisectoral manner with institutions, from schools to centers for psychophysical support and the civil society organizations. Only together we can work on the prevention and suppression of violence. Continued cooperation, support, and education are key to successful facing with violence. The key measure to combat violence is to report it, and then the penalty policy for perpetrators. We need to do our best to encourage victims of violence to report violence. In order to reach there must be good examples where victims were protected and perpetrators punished. It is important not to ignore problems, but and to take appropriate measures. I kindly ask you to look at the short video on violence on internet, and after that, my colleagues Arnaida Tajdarevic and Ms. Sasnic will open a new session on violence on internet, online violence.
What if mother and father see this? I should have never answered these messages. What happened is a crime, and it cannot be your fault. But I don't want this to become public knowledge. I understand, and I'm glad that you called. We are here to find out a way that suits you the best. How would you want all this to end? You're not alone. The blue phone is here to talk about the events that are difficult to talk about, but you feel very strongly about. Dear ladies and gentlemen, my name is Naida Hajdarevic, and I'm student of the Secondary Graphic School in Sarajevo. Yeah, my name is Meldin Fazlic, and I am the student of the 5th Grammar School in Sarajevo. Cyber violence is a violence that uses digital technologies. It can take place in social networks, chatting platforms, or gaming platforms. This is a behavior that is repeated with the intention of scaring, causing rage, or shaming those who are their target. Some of the examples are the following: spreading violence or publishing pictures or images, aiming to shame people on the networks, sending threatening messages on the chat platform, false representation, or sending messages on behalf or in the name of others. In view of the global connection by internet, global violence can have some serious consequences on mental health. Internet violence directly violates human rights of the children defined in the Article 19 that says that the child is entitled to protection against maltreatment and abuse. If the children have not been informed, educated, and trained to use the self-protection mechanisms before they enter the internet world, there is a higher chance that they would become victims. The Regulatory Agency for Communications in 29 says that number of internet users is 22.6%. Internet violence is a specific form of violence because the victim is always accessible to the bully. There are no borders or physical proximity requirements on the internet. And the victim is always accessible. Violence, internet violence, and physical live violence do not exclude each other. Quite the contrary. Consequences of online violence may last a long time and impact the victim in many different ways, making it feel angry, ashamed, losing interest in things they love, physical. They may experience physical symptoms like stomachache or headache. The feeling of being bullied may prevent people start talking about this. In extreme cases, cyber violence may lead to suicide. Prevention of online violence requires cooperation between the platforms, legislators, and educational institutions. Education on digital behavior and consequences of online violence is the key in the attempts to limit this problem. Appropriate measures on the internet and stronger legislation may contribute to a safer online environment. When combating online violence, the society needs to provide support to the victims. By raising awareness of the harmful impact of online violence, we can all work together in building a positive digital violence that facilitates and cultivates positive cooperation. Today, we need to get more answers on who to report online violence by the profiles with hidden identity and what would be the sanctions. The next session, the domestic violence and the gender-based violence, will be opened by Sumeja Karadzic and Omar Obacic, but before that, please watch this video. This physical violence needs to be reported. Are you there? I hear you are afraid. Calm down. I don't want my father to go to prison. Okay. I don't want anything bad to happen to him. I know, but I don't want him to hit me. I just want all this to stop. Hey, it's just me and you talking. I understand what you are afraid of. I'm here to think together with you of the best solution for you. Are you in danger right now? Can you speak? Yes. Are you there? Yes. Don't worry. Nobody will come now. Nobody will take anybody anywhere. We are here for you. We are going to find a solution that you think is the best for you. Thank you. You're welcome. Are you okay? Yes. Tell me, what is it that you need the most right now? You're not alone. The blue phone is here for the events that it's hard to talk about, but are still strongly felt. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, my name is Sumeja Karadzic, a student of the 9th grade of primary school in Sarajevo. I live in a country that doesn't have a single registry of anything, including the cases of violence against children. In the special report of Ombudsman for Children of Republika Srpska on domestic violence against children from 21, it says that 49% of the cases of violence were reported by institutions, organizations, or associations. 25% by mothers, 20% by other entities, 4% by a father, well, only 2% were reported by children. The same findings showed that in 2020, a total of 784 children were victims of domestic violence. Of this number, 20 were children with developmental difficulties, equally divided, men and boys and girls. Thank you, Sumeja. Good day. My name is Amar Ombasic. I come from Zenica. I'm a student of the primary school Catholic School Center Sveti Pavle, St. Paul. In a number of cases, the father was the abuser. In 20% of the cases was the mother and 20% somebody else. 40 children were taken away from their families. In the same period, only 30% of the Centers for Social Work participated in programs and implemented activities of prevention of violence. 70% has never been engaged in any activities aimed at prevention of violence. In 21 statistical bulletins of social protection for Republika Srpska say that in 2021 there was 958 active cases of children being neglected or abused by their parents. In the Federation, this number was 1,343 children. According to the UNICEF survey, over 40% of adults believe that corporal punishment is justified. To beat up a child is desirable social behavior, while beating up an adult is not. According to the law on protection against domestic violence, anybody who learns of the violence, including private individuals, teachers, people working or in non-governmental organizations or any institutions, have the duty of reporting to the Center for Social Work. We, the children, need the law on prohibition of corporal punishment in all environments and raising general public awareness of the serious consequences the corporal punishment has on children. We need a single phone number that we can call from all the points and using all the operators that's easy to remember. Physical violence is very much present, but it's often forgotten that psychological violence, gender-based violence are still there, but they are not being talked about very much. And victims of these forms of violence realize that they are the victims only at a later stage. The term itself, the gender-based violence, leads to lack of understanding of both men and women. World Vision implemented a study on the topic of violence against children and gender-based violence. Based on their data, they produced a report that, amongst other things, says that men, more than women, justify juvenile marriages and physical violence against women in special circumstances, and they have some prejudice regarding the roles of men and women. The difference between interviewees who are men or women are most obvious with respect to getting married before the 18 years of age and some stereotypes about roles of men and women. 90% of interviewees do not justify physical violence against women, except when the woman is not taking good care of the children. More significant differences between male and females of all ages have been identified with respect to the views on causing sexual aggression of men against women who are inappropriately dressed. The smallest differences in the first category, 12 to 17. As people grow older, these differences increase. 46% of over 25 men believe that women cause sexual aggression by the way they're dressed, while the same percentage of women disagrees with this. This implies the conclusion that persons over 18 have been deprived during their formative education of learning of human rights and rights of women and gender roles of men and women and gender stereotypes. More efforts need to be done to include this topic in formal education instead of treating them as project activities implemented by civil society organizations in only some schools and communities. Thank you very much. Now I call on the moderator to open the panel discussion. Thank you.
You see the expeditiveness. They left 20 minutes more to the panelists. These are young people. Brilliant. Sumeya, Imran, Naida, Meldu. another Sumaya Amar, so they deserve not just our applauses, our expression of support. Congratulations for the excellently presented topics of our conference. They, just like all our children deserve continuous tackling of problems, they deserve to be asked to be in accordance with their age, part of the system that will tackle the problem, the number of problems that we named, and bring good results. And there are not many applauses we can give today for such efforts. And sorry, but how with understanding, I'm looking at Duška Jurišić, Jasna is here, Sanel, I'm talking about communicologists and journalists. This is a good source of energy for our work. We'll discuss it later on again. As Amar said, it's time for our panel discussions. There are two of them planned for today. Just several brief notes. It's now that the children gave us some time. We have an hour and a half for both panel discussions. 45 minutes for each. You must admit that there is not enough of time to discuss on all of them. I expected you to be interactive, and after we do part of the talks with the panelists, that all of you present here include to the extent you wish, in the way you believe, could contribute constructively to our today's discussion. Also, the panelists are kindly requested to be as specific as possible, as clear as possible, and in the end, we have to come to this set of conclusions, some may say recommendations. We are in the Parliament, in the Assembly, so to give a special emphasis on that in the context on the conclusions and recommendations. On the reflections of the President of Legislative Authority on all the issues that we heard of from our excellent young people, how to deal with them through legislative reform. So let's begin with Milica Jerčić to join us. Milica, in addition to others, she's the head of the Committee for Children of the Parliamentary Assembly in Republika Srpska. I'm looking at her and I can see how she will do it. Just a small digression. Milica, whenever she talks for public, she's just close to my heart, the Herzegovina part of the identity, and I'm 1/4 Herzegovinian, but we are not going to group ourselves according to that, although it's not bad. Mr. Zlatko Miletić, representative in the House of Peoples of the Parliamentary Assembly of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Milijana Simić, head of the board for the human rights of the Brčko District Assembly, and Dragan Milković, representative in the House of Representatives of the of the Parliament of the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina. As we had previously agreed to give some 90 seconds in the very beginning to reflect on what we heard from the wonderful team. Thank you. I will begin with quoting Radika Janasjev, who means a lot for Herzegovina. I apologize, but Herzegovina is in my heart. Children must be treated. They don't need cakes. They need and chocolate. So all of us together, we need to take care of kids, not to buy them cakes and chocolates, but to work with them. And exactly the messages that these excellent children have sent us, just to listen to that and to apply them throughout our legislation. I will use, before my 90 seconds, to thank all the wonderful children. Please greet them once again in the last row. And they are very courageous. They are the example of everything that our future means. As for the legislation, well, we'll do it later. We'll discuss it later. This was just a short reflection of what we heard from the young people. Mr. Miletic, you 90 seconds. You could see that Milica finished in 73 seconds. I normally extend, so I apologize. Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, I want to take the opportunity of the day for all of you who are here today. You're our children. I congratulate on your data. I'm glad that you're here. And I kindly ask you, since somebody said that you're here as a symbolic manner, you are not in symbolic manner, but in essence, this is the home of your parents. We are here to serve you and to do our best to help us and our children in the future period. And given the 6 or 7 boys and girls that I heard, if I had the political power, you're more capable and you have more skills than most of the politicians, as you call them in the beginning, that are exercising their political duties here. There will be opportunity discussed. Thank you. Zlatko, we have very good politicians, but you were brilliant children. And I would accept the second part of his, you can move forward. You are also present in politics. First of all, to greet all the young people, congratulations on your day. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss it in the parliament in Sarajevo. I would say that young people have a huge potential and that we need to include them more often in political, social, and other development. We need to look at them as relevant partners and not only to include them together with us, but when we talk about the rights of the child and young people, we need to ask them specifically what they need, what they're faced with, and how we can help them. Thank you. Mr. Milkovic. Thank you, the organizer, for the invitation and to congratulate children their day. For such things, I mean, this exceptionally important conference and event, responsible people will prepare themselves for such event. I try to prepare some things on how to say, on to be relevant, so to say. And then children came in front to speak. And then I realized that, first of all, I didn't have to prepare myself. I rarely feel not to speak before many people, but without saying further, I don't remember the time when I was so scared after I heard these children. So later on, I suppose we'll discuss in more detail, but just one point. Children ask, these young people ask, why you're not taking us into account, why you're not taking our opinion into account, because whatever they say to you, our memory is as such that we easily forget how it was when you were 18. Remind us of that, push us forward to, I'm thinking of us who are in the position to take decisions, force us to take everything what your needs are. What you did today is the best way, is the right way to do so. Thank you. Now I'll take the opportunity given by the organizer. I have back pain, huge back pain, and I have to say it, but this is an event that you don't want to miss. So I will probably combine the chair and the stage floor. So now it's better. I'm next to Milica. Milica, you started with family law in Bosnia and Herzegovina, entity of Republika Srpska, include punishing violence against children. What is going on with the reporting mechanism towards the legislative government? As for the reporting, I specifically don't have all information, except that I know that the ombudsmen are in charge of preparing the reports on committed activities. Such reporting will in due time be achieved, but at the moment I don't have any information on reporting as regards to the family law and physical punishment of children that is forbidden by the family law. What in that context should be changed in the context of your last sentence? Well, definitely we need to adopt some action plans and strategies and reporting mechanisms that will be passed through legislative part, and that will be the right mechanism and the right reporting mechanism of sending the right messaging of the state of play in Republika Srpska. Now, when we discuss understanding children's rights, we heard Mr. Milkovic, who said, I prepared myself, and I know you prepared yourself. I don't say that preparedness is useless, but sometimes when we are faced with such information in such a good manner, we are being discouraged, especially with the support from some women. I must say it was brilliantly prepared in such a manner. And here is the role of us adults. I mentioned this law purposely because I noticed that you wanted to continue with in that sense. How much today the society understands the children's rights in the context of the committee that you are heading, where children are in the title itself. Our committee deals with children, adoption of strategies, and monitoring the implementation of these strategies, laws, and action plans with regards to children, youth, and the sports sector. As for what to do on child's rights, as for the child's rights, I would say that a child is a small man, a big man tomorrow. Today, a small creature. That needs to be protected in all manners possible, just like any other member of society. And through some legislative solutions in Republika Srpska, it has been done. But for some types of cyber violence, also the bullying, we haven't covered it. But for the family and domestic violence, Republika Srpska has done a great job, and the child is protected here not only as somebody who has been cause of violence, but also someone who participated as an observer in violence through the law on fight against domestic violence in Republika Srpska. A child is protected also if he saw and witnessed the violence. It was just like a mini interview, but you're very inspiring, I must say, Mr. Miletić. Let's begin with evaluation of coordination between executive and legislative authority in the context of your expectations in terms of executive power. Although legislative power should not be removed from their, just to thank the excellencies and the deputy minister and also all the employees of the Ministry of Human Rights and also all those who are working in the Committee for Children, UNICEF as well, all administrative levels of representatives. And to begin with that, I must say what Ms. Maya Gassal said, that I should attend this conference. I've read for 4 days, I've read all the problems, and some of it we heard from our children. You cannot enumerate all the things that have not been regulated in this country. And I was very frustrated to see how little we did for our children in the previous period. This coordination, especially in the last 4 years, was non-existent. It's not good to say, but mainly due to political reasons. Hopefully, the new minister and its deputy and all the bodies, and including the Ombudsman Office of Bosnia and Herzegovina, that will together achieve much more in terms of the measures and activities, but also to ensure financial funds for the 17 projects that are being implemented, and to provide financial support until we have implemented some of the suggestions raised by children. Now, when we discuss coordination between legislative and executive authorities, to be more specifically, primarily in Bosnia and Herzegovina, in order to address properly, we need to do monitoring on the implementation of the Convention of the Rights of the Child. That should be conducted by the competent Ministry of Human Rights and also with the Council for Children. And once we have the indications, the indicators were to see what we implemented where and how we should move forward. I think it's the right time, and hopefully people from Republika Srpska will not take me wrong. This is not a centralized request, unitary request. We had the opportunity to hear it before, but we need to have a separate law on children and young people to tackle a number of issues at the state level to remove the stupid things on introducing a single phone number, help number, which has been on the agenda for 4 years, not just pro forma, but I looked at the previous two plans, but their implementation is questionable. When we discuss, we didn't hear a number of problems. For example, when we talk about preschool and primary school education, some of them don't have free lunches, and criminals in prison have free meals. So on the inclusion of children in schools, on bad payment of teachers, educators, on the IT networks, and we need to limit access to the networks, especially in the part where it brings violence. It introduced some new values that shouldn't be the right social values. So there are numerous problems that the institutions and the Council of Ministers and the parliamentarians as well, we need to take more part in tackling these problems. When we discussed during the last panel, I wrote something that you said was a contact point. How to come, it's in the light of the right question, answer you gave. So one starting contact point to speed up the process on improving the existing and the adoption of the new legislation in the entire set. You mentioned political moment, how to overcome, because we're talking about children. Primarily, responsibilities on us who are involved in this job, me personally, and I promise to you that in the following 3 years, I will do our best to move it from the starting point. But there is also responsibility of the international community, which leaves slowly that we don't have such contact point at the level of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Is it also the Ministry for Human Rights and Refugees? Yes, I think it's the right place to begin with the ministry. And I must say that I was in the Committee for Human Rights in the previous mandate. We had a huge fight against non-work on all these matters, including children, because citizens and on many issues are neglected. In essence, it shouldn't be a political question. It's not a political question as children see it, because we have the same children in the Federation, in Brčko district and the Republika Srpska, and they do need our attention in the context of the wish that they achieve their dreams. And in order for them to achieve their dreams, we need to do our work properly in accordance with the law and our authority and authorization. Mrs. Simic, let's begin with, and I also asked that question, Melissa asked that question, understanding of the society, what are the rights of the child? Do we detect these things properly, influenced by what we heard from young people today? But I'm afraid that there is no continuity, and I'm afraid that in this process we must do huge important steps, and I apologize for explaining this, but I believe I have the right to say this in order to reach the phase where the society would move forward, if nothing else, to move forward in properly understanding the children's rights, and we are returning back that this is the process that requires continuity. Thank you. And before we answer this question, I would like to remind you that the Brčko district is a self-government unit that has both the legislative and the executive authority, but we have an advantage in terms of adoption of legislation and amendments to the legislation. Involvement of young people is always insufficient. Education is also of the employees and authorities, and is not good. And we can also always work more. And I can say that as the president and as the head of the committee for the rights of the child and gender equality in a Dukčić, together with her, we tried to do a lot, and we did a lot, and to include the young people. And I'll give you an example that we organized a lot of conferences with the NGO sector, including schools and all the institutions, also the Judicial Commission of the Brčko district, and we sent some 20 proposals to the amendments of the legislation for regarding rights of children. Most of them were accepted, and I was glad to see that the Judicial Commission contacted us after 6 months. Most of these amendments will be adopted, and the adoption of the legislation will be forwarded for adoption soon. It includes types of sexual harassment, also the peer violence and prevention of juvenile marriages, and other important amendments were included. And there were judges present who are involved in these cases. We have first instance and appellate court, and they said if the members of the parliament will be the most advanced if it's adopted in all of the Bosnia and Herzegovina. In addition to the criminal code amendments, we are also working on amendments to the rights of the child law, where we are trying to improve the rights of children to include more in the child's allowance. We also had some cooperation with primary schools to include their suggestions in prevention of violence, and it's up to us, the deputies, to get involved and to involve our children, to ask them specifically to try to solve these problems.
Thank you very much. Mr. Miokovic, implementation of the penalty policy is one thing, but the other thing that you have been insisting on is changing the paradigm, the mentality, especially in the context of what we can hear and see in the public arena when we talk about violence. What would that mean? Dragan Miokovic knows to say, considering the work that I used to do, people sometimes think that I'm avoiding the importance of the penalty policies But you do insist on the change of paradigm. Yes, of course, the penalty policy and repression is an important segment in implementation or realization, rather, I'll say it, of the rule of law. However, if the strictness, if the punishment, if the imprisonment or death penalty, if they were solutions, the United States would be the safest country in the world. But we all know they're not. My thesis, as Mr. Ondrić said, is that we need to work to change the paradigm. Whenever I mention this in the circles where I work now, and I work as a member of parliament, I am professional member of parliament. Whenever I say this, they respond, well, it's in the long run. Let's see what we can do now through the laws and decrees or regulations. We are seeing women killed every other day. Children are exposed to violence. Yes, but these should be parallel processes in the least. Yes, absolutely. Now the female part of the audience, we men, I've been watching football for a long time, and the only thing that's consistently there in playing a game of football, not only in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but in the whole region, is that we have a strong feeling of spite. We will win against them out of spite, but that's not the way to win. We are a society that very clearly, very loudly, very frequently, sometimes very aggressively enforces tradition and protection of families. And when we talk about this, we often use the examples, or usually use the example, you know what's happening in Sweden or Germany, a child leaves home at 17. But we here, we are asking some learned heads whether a woman can travel to Zenica on her own. Now we are having some very serious discussions. Some very serious people are trying to persuade us, and they give us arguments that women have not been born with half a brain. I had the opportunity to work with an NGO here in implementation of a program in 4 secondary schools in Sarajevo. They had plans to talk to the graduates on peer violence. And this was my part, placing an emphasis on the violence in adolescent relationships. 4 schools, 2 were from the suburban areas of Sarajevo Canton, 2 were central. And I'm emphasizing this. These are secondary schools. The graduates, they are either already adults or soon to be legal adults. And when one of these secondary schools in the center of Sarajevo got its turn, we were informed that the parental council got together and requested not to have this in their schools. This example is something that I mentioned because I heard what these beautiful young people here have said. If anybody is in favor of complying with the procedures, I am the one. If there's anybody who thinks that the children should be formally and legally protected in every context, including the context of the third parties coming to schools, I am all in favor of that. But I assure you, going into a primary and secondary school in Sarajevo Canton, I have this information that the situation is a bit different. In Zenica, a bit better. Is like going in a very strictly protected institution. In what sense? Well, you need to have the approval. These colleagues who are working there know this. I know this indirectly. In the context of contacting first the competent ministry, then the school, whether you'll get the permission or not. In the context of the fact that one of the previous governments of Sarajevo Canton passed or presented a project that secondary schools should receive as a donation a certain number of hygienic pads for girls, and many schools refused that. Why? Well, it's a great question, but I'm not the right person to answer it. Well, it's your job to demand it. Well, my experience in this context that we are talking about now, and what I saw myself, is that in our traditional society that cultivates absolute strict protection of family, whenever you try to do something, try to go something deeper, to do something more about females in the context of education, and especially when, as a part of that education, you have the word sex in any context, you have a problem. And allow me just a little more time. Our children know a lot more than we think they do. That's important to be said, yes. Our children know much more than we can even guess they know. Thank you. Thank you very much. I will use this opportunity to offer to our excellent audience here. I'm looking at Dushka and I see that she was listening to everything very carefully for different reasons. But I would like you, Dushka, Mrs. Jurisic, to hear from you. Do we need a microphone, or do we need a wireless, or can you use this one? Oh, the microphone is coming. Thank you. I was going to listen a bit more, but first of all, I want to thank all the panelists and to make an observation that our younger generations should be safer. The older generation can tell you that we found it very strange to have so many medical doctors amongst politicians. I'm very happy to see two former police officers here in this panel, and that should make the children feel safer, as this is another aspect that should be taken into consideration. I want to thank Mr. Miletic and Mr. Miokovic. Mr. Miletic, for your fantastic preparation for this topic, especially since I know that at the occasion of appointment to the Human Rights Commission, he was against it because he feels much closer to the intelligence and security services. And to Mr. Miokovic for mentioning this very sensitive aspect. Having in mind that we've been listening to politicians for some 20 minutes already, and representatives in the authorities. So thank you to Milica. You have definitely something to say about these problems. I'd like to hear from children what they expect from us, and then I would like to answer to very concrete questions by Mr. Miletic on the competences of the Ministry of Human Rights and Refugees. The girls and boys started with the applause. Really, even though you presented your problems in a very structured way, do you want to say something? And the microphones are coming. Once a journalist, always a journalist. So let's hear you. Good day, my name is Masha. Dear members of the Parliament, we are addressing you on behalf of the fourth grade of the primary school Mehmed Ali Makdistar Sarajevo, and I believe on behalf of all the children. We are happy that our older peers talked about some of our problems, and we hope we will follow them in future, follow their examples. In our schools, we talk about the rights of the child. We talked about violence from the youngest age. The justice seems to be very slow in our country. The laws on the rights of the child are not adopted as much as they should be. We expect that you will agree amongst yourselves to improve the situation of us, the children. We don't understand why the seriously ill children have to pay for the medicines, why the children with developmental difficulties have no right to support and more help. Hi, my name is Rea. I'd like to send a message to the members of the parliament to advocate for our rights. All children must have every opportunity to smile, to be happy in our families, in our schools. We wish our families had enough money to meet all our needs and that the children have all what they need. Give us more playgrounds, more educational centers, and adults do not beat children. Prevent violence. Hurry up. Children are suffering. Good day. My name is Jan. Has there been violence when you were children? How did you feel? Good day. My name is Damir. If you know that children are suffering, why? What are you doing about it? And whether a new law would help? Okay. This goes. This proves what Mr. Miokovic said. Let's do not underestimate our children. And these children are grades 3 or 4. They are, of course, doing this with support of their teachers, but that's not everything. They are presenting these thoughts on their own. Mr. Miletic, when you were a child, that was the question. When you were a victim of violence, or were you a victim of violence? We can say something about this, but it's important to hear messages like this. Since children are being honest and open, I must be open too. I was a very mischievous child. I grew up in Bistri, Sarajevo, and that neighborhood was famous for it. But violence in this scope was not there because we had a different state system, different government system. You were allowed to make stupid things, but you were punished harshly, not by your parents and get beating from them, but by the competent authorities. So we were careful not to be not in the position or to be even approached by the police officer, or how we called them at the time, milicioner. And this is a very important, something that you mentioned is very important, the sick children. We are still unable to provide free treatment, free education, primary and secondary, etc. But I hope that in future, with the help of the competent institution, we'll do everything possible to change the situation. Duška, shall we respond to the question now? Because I'd like to move on to other interlocutors, but this is important, the contact point that would speed up the processes. Mr. Miletić mentioned the ministry that you come from, so let's give you 2 minutes. Before this, I want to give the floor to Mirjana. Yeah, you are the moderator, so I will not take your role. The ministry can be the contact point. We already heard that the Council for Children has done a lot, as did Dragan Miokovic. And I will add a provocation. We don't need more regulations and laws. Laws that are not being implemented will not help a lot. But when we talk about the contact point, in the most recent session of the Council for Children, when UNICEF openly asked, is there a political problem that the 3 operators make sure that we have a single number that the children who have problems in family or suffer from domestic violence to call, that there is no problem like that. This is something that the Ministry of Human Rights and Refugees can ensure, and the Ministry of Transport and Communication. All 3 operators are on board. So let's repeat, all 3 operators are on board and they can offer this. Are the 2 ministries that you mentioned agree regarding the competencies, the Ministry of Human Rights and Refugees and Ministry of Transport and Communications? Do we have a single voice from the 2 ministries that they will not play ball and throw balls into each other's courts? Yeah, we agree, but the blue phone is not just the place and the number to call. This implies a strong coordination amongst different institutions. They must be critical about this country. What we found, unfortunately, Mr. Miletić and dear children, is very poor infrastructure in the ministries. What had been built over the past 28 years was not strong enough to cope with this, with such a major task. And there we get to the political will, whether the Ministry of Human Rights and Refugees can have enough funds to seriously address this problem. You've heard it already. Just a voice, somebody on the other side saying, we'll help you. But we must make sure that this is not just the words. The Centers for Social Works and other services need to work together, and all of that costs money, and that cannot be created overnight. And that's where we get to the issue of political will. I must remind you, there are some in these countries who doubt whether the Ministry of Human Rights and Refugees of Bosnia and Herzegovina and other ministries at the state level are needed at all. And now I'd like to give the opportunity to Mirjana to say something. But before that, it is very understandable that you need to deal with the weaknesses on one hand. And on the other hand, those who elected this government expect these to be parallel processes, strengthening and building some new capacities. Please, Mirjana, it's your turn now.
Thank you for the floor. Marinković Lepić Mirjana, chair of the President of the Parliament of the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina. By my wish, I'm the member of the Commission for the Rights of the Child. equality of genders as well. And this is something that these two commissions are considered as less attractive, that these are not very important commissions. Everybody is fighting to be in the legislative law, constitutional law. What does that say? Well, it says where human rights are placed in public discourse. Everything that I heard today, and also from children who understand well, also from the panelists, these are the points that we could be discussed. But I will talk about another aspect. You mentioned the media and journalists several times who are present here today, and I'm glad. And this is campaign. You see this number, phone number. The question is how many children and adults know about this number. So we're talking about patriarchal societies, stereotypes, that violence is justified, violence against children, against women. Yesterday I read that there was a murder of, in self-defense murder, a woman killed her husband and then she lost the custody of children. That was the case in Croatia. I think we also have one case where when she publicly talked about violence, domestic violence, she was actually marked by the community that she was disgraceful to her husband. Can you imagine? So in that context, we are going back to our topic. Children are to the least possible extent, they are just touched by the consequences, if not even more. They can't be without any pain going through this process, these children. Whenever we are discussing human rights, and I dealt with them previously, and I'm discussing it in my academic surrounding, I always say that the public must be better informed. Media must have a huge responsibility when we must have public campaigns in public broadcasting services. You can see these short videos. They are very short. They are less than a minute, but they are addressing the issues we want to talk about. So just to address the mindset and to change the philosophy of people, I know my role, adoption of new legislation. I'm always open to discussing it with other people. I'm mostly frustrated that in achieving the human rights and notion of the human rights and violence, primarily, that we moved a step back or several step backs. Why? Well, I don't know. Maybe it's just the consequence of everything that is going on, we have been through, and it seems to me as if the political momentum that I don't want to discuss right now, but I believe that we are discussing less important things, and I'm really surprised by retrograde attitudes that anyone can justify any type of violence. Therefore, I believe so changing the paradigm and sectoral cooperation, public media campaign, sectoral approach to changing our mind. But first of all, we need to reach as many people as possible with these messages on the protection of human rights. Thank you. So both of you, Duška and you, joined as panelists. Now we are trying to be as brief as possible because if we are approaching the second panel and we have some more work to do over there. Thank you very much. Amra Junuzovic-Kan. I am the representative, parliament representatives. Amra is here. So my problems with the back, Amra is here as a doctor. Yes, both practically and in consultations. But given that I'm primarily a pediatrist, I would just discuss the health aspect of the child protection, which is very important. The health system, according on which violence was executed, really it answers in a competitive manner as the violence against children and women it became more public and more available, so to say, and we need to work on that to make it maximum available. We have been working on practically on education of health professionals and all those involved in the health system to educate them on detecting violence. This has brought us some benefits. Violence is always happening, unfortunately, but this principle of detection of violence is very important, of any type of violence. And as the life brings technological advancement and other advancements, there are more risk factors and that we need to recognize. So the whole life learning is very important, and therefore education, yes, but also, as I'm discussing specifically the health system, yes, it's very important factor. Indeed, we approach as the health system, we come when this after the violence occurred, so we react to that by response. But the health system also has the preventive role. But it's always, there's no doubt about that, how we will respond to children or adults who have been neglected physically or punished. If we can do in our health rooms, if we can recognize it as a special phenomenon, we developed with some NGOs the procedures to address how to address, whom to report, when and how. We, the health system, respond after the violence has occurred. Therefore, the preventive activities, raising awareness of what can be considered as violence and how it's detected is very important. Just to stop you briefly, exactly this, Ms. Mirjana, as we discussed, is the coordination of different sectors. I'm still fearing that our key problem is the lack of continuity, because we leave such conferences full of energy. Such opportunities fill us with excellent opportunity. The children gave us good incentives, but in another hour and 15 minutes, I will try to push for a conclusion that will include continuity and more often a meeting to discuss on all these subjects. We're coming almost to the end of the first panel. Milica, in addition to what you wanted to say, my question would be, what would be, after the conference, your first step? Thank you. First, reply to the post questions by children, because they inspired me to go back to my childhood, to make the parallel when I was a child and compared to how it is today. Today, you're in much more jeopardy compared to us then, because today you have internet technology and technologies that are unfortunately being misused and less used for what they are intended for. And therefore, you are more exposed to cyber violence than we were at our time. But I will also say that there was bullying at my time. There was a lot of teasing among children, and I was the one who went through this story because I learned a lot in my classroom. Although I was in a rural school, we were all faced by that. And the second question, whether children should be medically treated by SMS messages. In Republika Srpska, we resolved this issue. We made a decision to have the fund for children treatment, and in such a way, each child can be treated both within the Republika Srpska or abroad by the funds of Republika Srpska government. Also, we adopted a special registry where rapers are being entered, and more meaningful is that persons who want to work in schools must bring a certificate that they are not entered in the registry. Therefore, we protected our children from potential rapists or those who unfortunately committed such crime. More importantly, in Republika Srpska, we have a general protocol on treatment in case of domestic violence. The involved our courts, Ministry of Interior, and more importantly, educational and health institutions. It is important, very important, because starting from the educational institutions, we're beginning with prevention. It is important to be achieved everywhere. Prevention is from preschool education through workshops, through special classes, bringing NGO sector to have some presentations on the domestic violence or domestic online in the community or wider. Will have to be faster. What would be your first specific next step after today's meeting? They turn you off your microphones. What we really have to work on together, which is generally the biggest issue today, is cyber violence, internet violence. We must jointly work much harder to find some tools to protect children online, to protect our children data. One of the items also includes the criminal code adopted in Republika Srpska that texts, videos of persons cannot be published. Also adults are protected by that law, and we need to adopt separate legislation regarding protection of children on internet, and we need to find keys to lock internet accesses and everything that is important for our children. Mr. Miletic, your next step, just briefly, it could be divided into 2 to 3 aspects. First is to give support to the competent institutions and also the Ministry of Human Rights, the Ombudsman. The next step, if it doesn't go that way, I have the right as the member of the parliament to ask other members of the parliament what they would do on these segments, at least from the competence of the state level. And since I'm very often in media, I will take all the opportunities to discuss these problems, these issues, in order to make pressure on public in Bosnia and Herzegovina. As for treatment of children and also inclusion of children with disabilities in the Brčko district, a lot of it is being covered by the funds, and we also have funds for parents who have children with disabilities if they are unable to take care of their children and if they are unemployed. And now I would like to discuss not as a parliamentarian but as a mother. I am a mother of a girl who is 8 years old, and we are faced by the same problems on a daily basis, and I must say that there is lack of empathy from the bearers of the functions. Sometimes I'm faced with not knowing the reply, and we are those who create, who should be able to create a safe and good environment for our children, and we are responsible for all the problems they're faced by. And the problems for children in Sarajevo are equal to the problems those in Brčko. And if Miljana has some problems and the others don't, it doesn't mean we shouldn't help the children in that area. Mr. Miokovic, together with the colleagues in Parliament, I'll continue to work on the procedure of the adoption of the amendments to the Criminal Code of the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, the law on protection against violence, family law, and the draft law on information, IT security. And then I will really do my best. I will engage myself better to be better informed on the previously done things in the context of the forbidding of physical violence on children. This is something that we need to be better informed of. And in the end, I'm the operational person. Everything that I do in an operational manner. And what I will certainly continue is to go out on the field to what I had the opportunity and pleasure to discuss to do once together with the Deputy Minister of Human Rights and visit several places on my own on several occasions where any type of violence was recorded, at least as the president of the Commission for Prevention of Violence, just to approach the victims. It is very important that you mention the field work. From the perspective of a journalist, the field work has a special significance to discuss with people, to visit them, to remove barriers where it's not easy to come are some of the challenges, and this is definitely an important message for the end, just like any other messages we heard. And I believe children gave a very good point. Duška, you wanted to say something as well? There is a message I've received. It's very important that Brčko district is here with us today. Thank you for your presence. This is the problem that was presented to the Council for Children. This is definitely a discriminatory norm in one of the legislation that needs to be abolished. And that is removal of children amenities for children who have more than 36 unjustified absence. I believe that Brčko district should cancel this point, because if it comes to the higher judicial instances, not to mention the Court of Justice of the European Union, and that will be one of the things that will cause damage to our country. Thank you for this question, and I'm glad that I can reply. We had the change of the law in 2021 on child allowances, and I'm not happy to say that I'm in the opposition in the parliament. I was against this decision. I insisted at the session of the assembly that the committee should really revise or amend of some legislation, and together with OSCE we try to in a way to make a draft that each child should have the right to the allowance regardless of their family situation. There is one example in Posavina Canton, and hopefully by the end of my mandate we will succeed that. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, all of you. We are moving forward to the next panel. Reflection from the authorities.
Joško Mandić, Agencija za ravnopravnost spolova Bosne i Hercegovine,
Ministry of Human Rights and Refugees of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Professor Jasna Duraković, Professor Dr. Jasna Duraković, Minister of Education in the Government of the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Ms. Gordana Rajić, Ombudsperson for Children in Republika Srpska, and Mirsada Poturković, Center for Social Work, Sarajevo Canton. And I don't know whether Sasha Petrović is here. He is an expert in cybercrime and cyber violence. Can you hear us, Sasha? Can we hear him? And is telling me, yes, he's there. Okay. We can see you, Sasha. Have a safe trip. Sasha is not driving. We are not committing any offenses. Mr. Mandic, when we talk about this, what are the competencies of the agency that you come from? Everything is related to your ministry, but it's good if we could list these competencies. But first, I would appreciate some reflection on what we heard from the children. Thank you to co-organizers of this conference, and thank you to our children. It took a lot of patience to hear all of this. I will try to speak in a way that is appropriate and not so boring for you children. In terms of representing the agency that I come from, my agency is Agency for Gender Equality, and we are part of the Ministry of Human Rights and Refugees. Our primary competence is to monitor implementation of the law on gender equality. To monitor what the government institutions and bodies are doing to ensure full equality of men and women, boys and girls, in the sense of equal opportunity and equal chance, irrespective of their gender. How do we do that? Well, we are collecting all kinds of data, analysis. We are responsible for preparing the gender action plan together with other institutions. This is the gender action plan on the path towards achieving this goal of equality between men and women in our society in all areas, public life and private life. The law gives us a lot of opportunity. We are now making sure that it's implemented by all, especially government institutions. I mean here the executive power and judicial power. So when we develop the gender action plan, which is only logical, it is the task of each institution to do it. So every institution needs to send us at a given time a report on what they had done during the previous period. So we report to the Council of Ministers on what all the institutions have done to achieve gender equality. In addition, we are open to reports of violation of these laws, and any citizen of this country can address us and report any institution or organization in Bosnia and Herzegovina for violation of human rights. Thank you very much, Professor Durakovic. We let Joško to explain something about the agency. Now I will ask the three of you about your views and your position on what we heard from children. I want to greet you all and thank the organizers and our excellent children. I was really impressed by them, by their knowledge and articulation and their desire and wish to try and change things. By the time they get to the secondary schools, I hope the situation will be much better. And not only that late, but until they are 6th or 7th grade, I hope we'll have some legal solutions in place and sanctions for all those who make such serious offenses like violence and abuse against children. Just very briefly, if I may, just 2 sentences. I will try to be very concise. So all these challenges that we face, the primary issue is protection of the rights of the child. Violence is something that is deeply rooted in our society, and we must stop running away from that fact. We must be aware of the fact that it comes from the society, from the educational system that is not aligned with the current needs and does not provide functional skills and knowledge which we so direly need. What's the other thing that we face with? And this is the first time that we are talking about. Not all children have equal rights to healthcare or access to education, which should be an absolute right above any other. Socioeconomic status. Urban environments are one thing, rural environments are completely different. So we need to take all these segments that contribute to development of violence unhindered. There's been very little talk about prevention, and this is something we need to change completely in order to avoid repeating the same stories to the future generations and to leave this place with specific conclusions and deadlines by which time we need to have the laws implemented. This is my goal and my wish, and I will stop here. Thank you. Well, Ms. Rajic, good day. I want to greet you all, especially the children, and to congratulate their day. 30 years ago, we committed to give the children right to express their opinion and participate in decision making. And what the children have done today is a great example of how it should look like in practice. So very short and clear. Ms. Mirsada, hello to children, hello to the teachers, professors, and of course to the other participants here. A big thank you to the children for reminding us of what the violence is, for reminding us of the kinds of violence, of what has been regulated and what's not, and reminded us of the biggest problem in the legislative and executive branch of power and where the laws are being applied, and for inviting us to give them an opportunity to speak, to participate in all the decisions that concern them. And now we'll go to Sasha while he's still online to use this opportunity to hear him and talk to him. Sasha, you had the opportunity to see in written form, since you're traveling, what the children were saying and to say something about this. And then I will ask you questions and you feel free to stay with us as long as you can. First of all, I'd like to greet you all, especially children. Now I'm traveling with the Association for the Rights of the Child from Bijeljina. We are traveling to Banja Luka to give a lecture on the internet dangers. We started in 2009, and the problems were the same in 2009 as now in 2023. We are the experts for hiding the problems under the carpet and for getting political points. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, we have the laws, we have people, but these laws are not being implemented, and there are no sanctions for not implementation of laws. So everything boils down to the conferences and conclusions from the conferences. I am the one who is on the front line, and the only thing that we have is the increase of crimes, of abuse of children in various forms, including internet abuse. Our legislation is in line with the European Convention on Internet Violence. We can act on it. Many changes have been done, but nothing is done in practice. We are hiding all of that under the carpet. There is no empathy on the part of persons who are making decisions on our lives and lives of our children. My brain cannot process that. I have a feeling that the people who are making decisions on all these solutions simply think that it's happening somewhere else. It will never happen to their children. But when it does, then they activate the whole system. I'm very happy to see the people here. And Mr. Zlatko Miletić is the only one who contributed a lot to this matter when he was director of the Federation Police Administration. He established a department for fighting internet crime, but he left the police. It was in 2010 or 11, and we are moving downwards. We'll see what will be the actions of the present day decision makers. I will mention that our children deserve, well, they have the right to life, but statistics says that when a child goes missing and is abducted or kidnapped, in the first 3 hours has strong chances of suffering grievous consequences. But here, our institutions cannot agree on who is competent. I am sorry for being so brutally honest. No, you don't apologize for that, but stay online for as long as you can. Now I need to ask Gordana Rajić one thing. The children are here with us. And they are here for some very real reasons. Why is it so important, this right of the children to participate in this process? And I'd like to answer the question, what the surveys tell us about this and why is it so important to conduct them? Well, first of all, it's our obligation under the convention. When it comes to the legislative area in Republika Srpska, we have made significant progress by including a special article that gives the right to having opinion to children, and this is not restricted in terms of the age. Every child, depending on their maturity, has the right to be informed of the proceedings and to give their opinion. Of course, this does not mean that children are making decisions, but it means that if we are deciding something for our children, they should participate. And we saw that our children know what's the problem, that they have identified the key things, key problems very well, and they offered some concrete recommendations. So if we were to listen to them more, we would definitely have something to learn from them. Professor Durakovic, the framework plan for prevention of violence in educational institutions, you have mentioned a number of problems. The problems that you talked about were not only related to education. But what is important to talk about is this framework prevention plan. At what stage it is at this point, and what can we say about it? Thank you for this question. From the moment that I got into this office, I've been faced with this serious problem of the widespread violence amongst children and youth. And I really started working on it seriously. And in the first days of my work, I put some public pressure on the media, knowing that this is something that is an emerging trend, a trend that will develop. And this is not a topic that is negligible. This is something that we should talk about every day, day after day, and trying to find solutions. This requires a wholesome approach and a cohesive structure of people from institutions who come here to work with the aim of finding solutions to avoid this happening again in future. That we do go there with a lot of energy, with some great conclusions, but it oftentimes remains just a dead letter. That's not what we want. We want really to work to prevent violence, not only in our educational institutions. This is the issue for the whole society, all different segments of society. We need to seek institutional assistance and coordination amongst the cantons. We have a disconnect there because of political disagreements. This must not be a political question. You did mention cantons. Yes, we need to overcome every ethno-national prefix and find a common solution. This is important for all our children. All our parents and future parents might find themselves in this situation of this happening to their children, and we must not wait for it happening to our children. Let's try to do something before that. I will keep repeating this and I'll never stop. We'll have to put pressure on all institutions, cantonal ministries of education and science. All relevant factors, international factors, are the ones who support all these projects. The plan is already in the implementation, in the first part of the implementation. And what we've done on behalf of the Federation Ministry of Education and Science is that we have already established this expert team of people to implement the plan in local communities, taking into consideration particularities of each local community and how they're going to implement it in primary and secondary schools. Well, our role is the coordinating role and the attempt to impose a certain framework, because there is no other way. We'll have to impose some things and lobby for that at higher levels with the help of the state level institutions. Thank you, Jasna. Ms. Poturković, Centers for Social Work. When we talk about violence and dealing with the numerous problems in the context of children and families, the first association is the Center for Social Work. And very often they are unjustifiably criticized, the Centers for Social Work. So what is your role? Thank you for this. Centers for Social Work are often called on even when children are in street begging or employed or is neglected in school, not appropriately dressed for the season, or if something happens in a building that points at a violence when the emergency aid identified some injuries, if people are divorcing. When any of these things happen, the Centers for Social Work are invited. They are also invited to respond to numerous administrative proceedings when a decision is being made on the children allowance or the elderly. We have people present from various systems and from various generations, and the Centers for Social Work, as the institutions of the system of social welfare, have huge, enormous responsibility. In Banja Luka, relatively many, compared to others, colleagues are doing their job, and they are in much better situation than the rest of the country in terms of human resources and even premises. other centers for social work in the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina. I'm not sure that in Brčko district is much different, but we don't have enough resources. And I'm not sure it's any better in Foča, Sokolac, and other parts of Bosnia and Herzegovina. We are colleagues, and we all have beneficiaries, and we do have some beneficiaries who benefit from all of our services. So we talk to each other, we discuss situations, we talk about some beneficiaries who are moving from one to the other local community. The centers for social work are expected to take care of every single individual or family that is in situation of social need.
The norms that are defined for the Centers for Social Welfare are incredible. If you are asked whether we need new piece of legislation to regulate the matter of protection from physical punishment, corporal punishment, I believe that the current legislation truly provides the possibility for a child to be fully protected. The fact that a child is not fully protected, that on a daily basis we are faced with such things that we are faced with, is produced by the following consequences. So at the level of the Federation, I think in Republika Srpska it is differently regulated. In the Federation, we don't have the law on social services. Our social welfare in the Federation, in the Brčko district and Republika Srpska are different. Here we have the law from 1999, where all children and some other people who are not here, so many things have changed meanwhile, and we don't have the new piece of legislation. We are doing the revised pieces of legislation that the lawyers know what I'm talking about. It needs to be, well, I believe it's good, but we don't have the proper infrastructure that allows us to do our job in accordance with the norms. The family law in the Federation is from 2005. It was amended in 2006. In three other institutions have adopted different legislations on 3 occasions. They are adjusting it to the new needs in the according to the developments in the society. We keep sending messages from the welfare centers that this is done. The change of legislation is done by professors, university professors, practitioners, where others can be involved as well. But from the practice, we need to hear what is going on. We need to be involved in the adoption, on working on the texts, but also on the adoption. To expect the welfare centers for everything that I mentioned in what should be objectively, it should be standardized by the jobs, the number of jobs, and the services need to be changed. But we need to have the legislation that would capacitate us. You are very inspiring, Ms. Rajic. The current legislative solutions, it seems to me that you're not satisfied with the solutions, legislative solutions, but to what capacity they have been implemented. Just briefly, I just want to walk around. Just a small suggestion, and that is we had the opportunity to hear the percentage and numbers on violence, but the key is that official data is lacking. Yes, it's important to be said. So these are the knowledges or data that are procured by the Ombudsman Office, UNICEF, or social welfare, but we are not doing it in a systematical manner. The recommendations of the UN committee have forced us to make a single registry, which is a key to analyze the problem and to see which part of the system is not functioning and what needs to be done. If somebody asks if the number of domestic violence has increased, we really don't have the good answer. This would be one of the first conclusions from today's conference, and in that sense is your answer. Yes, since we discuss a lot about violence, there are other types of violence. Do we only have more reporting, or there is a trend of increase in violence? Based on the data available, we are not able to properly answer that question. I wanted to ask Jasna one more question. You said that without leaving the room, without specific deadline, so to say, it seems to me, I will not ask the reply right now, but I want to position it and not to forget that, and I want to ask our great audience whether at this moment some of them would like to get involved, to say something, to give a comment. So here we have a young person. And also one more person on this side. One more microphone, please. My name is Neila BiH. I'm coming from BiH. I'm attending first grade of secondary gymnasium in BiH. The blue phone is led by the NGO, and the phone calls are free, but there are no lines that is available 24/7. So to us children, we need a number that we can call and would be responded by a person who could provide us psychological support and to respond to report it in accordance with the protocol to the social welfare centers or police. None of these numbers is part of the system of Bosnia and Herzegovina, therefore it's not sustainable. Therefore, I'm asking distinguished panelists, which institution in Bosnia and Herzegovina is responsible for introducing the 24/7 line for any child in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and can we share the responsibility and then in line with the to introduce that line. It's great that we had this question again, although we answered it before. We need to confirm some things again. Just an applause of support. Good afternoon. My name is Esma. I'm attending fourth grade of primary school. Why some children are forced to be on the street? My name is Ada. I'm in the fourth grade, and I'm together with Esma in the same classroom. What exactly a child should do if they are having some violence, if they are the victim of the violence. I'm 18. I'm coming from Tuzla. I have a question for the team there. What is with the registration of those who are victims of trafficking, and what about us who have no place to go after the age of 18? So Salmir, on behalf of World Vision Children, and Minister Durakovic, why in each canton, in each region, there is different policy to approaching NGOs and to children and youngsters? The NGOs are there to help children. We want to provide them education, best education that we can provide to improve their knowledge and all life knowledge. Why there is no single policy to approve the good quality organizations to approach to these young people to not to be prevented and refused by somebody. In one canton we are accepted, or in one school, or in the other one we are not. And for Republika Srpska, why NGOs are prevented for working with youngsters on topics that are important for them? We have many questions. Please just be brief. Just to share information with children where they can report inappropriate internet content. There is a Center for Safe Internet led by International Forum of Solidarity, where there is information that they can read to be educated on all types of online violence. And also there is a helpline and hotline, so expert support by psychologists, and to report for reporting any content, inappropriate content, whether they were faced with it or if they see some inappropriate content. What do you suggest to a child who is third or fourth grade? Well, there are some materials for children that are young, of course, with the support of parents, just to be informed that they can go on the website safechild.ba, because somebody asked that question, that there is at least one mechanism available to face with that. When I looked at you, I thought that it was one of children. That's why I asked you to be quick. Thank you for the reply. One question: who do we contact if we see cyber crime? Because we know that young people are actively using Instagram, TikTok, and so on. How we can protect our profiles? Question for Sasha. Jasna, quickly. Yeah. Thank you for the question. I wish I could tell you the answer. Very often I ask myself the same question. Inequality of educational policies in the context is a huge problem in the Federation, and therefore I have the same problem, which prevents me to deal with my intersectorial team working on the prevention of violence. That is the question for cantonal educational ministries. I can call them to suggest, to call upon their actions, but there is a long way to that. From my side, there is an intention and goodwill for that type of cooperation to be raised at a higher level, and also for the international organizations and the NGO organizations that are very many who try to make an overall framework for the protection of children, to have more space for cooperation, to be enabled to be involved, to help the cantons eventually. So I am available for any type of cooperation. Let's not forget to answer the question, what to do after the age of 18. As far as here, it's the same question. It's the same in all entities. Whom to report violence? We have, according to the protocol in Republika Srpska, you can report it 24/7. Who are then obliged to report all centers for welfare, no matter what type of violence it is, until we have a single phone line, you always have the police. Let's see if Sasha is with us. We heard the question in terms of cyber violence, whom to report it to, and a few words on recognizing online violence, please, without scaring children too much. So without hiding from ourselves, there is no enough empathy. Let's hear some sympathy. Any policeman that you see on the street is must listen to a child and according to the protocol of cooperation to report it to other institutions. On the other hand, the Ministry of Interior Affairs of Federation RS and Brčko district have a good cooperation and with SafeLine, and any anonymous or any other kind of information being reported is going to the Brčko district police. We act most of these reports, most of them are not real. In one case, we saved a child, not only that child, but other child as well. I'm trying to animate any children who are listening to this, that there is a Save Child web page where they can report anything, they can send questions and get replies, and in accordance with the Criminal Proceedings Act, any policeman must receive a report. There was also a question about how to protect your profile, online profile. Very important question, not only for young people, but also for adults. As for online accounts and online profiles, they all have their settings and privacy rules. It's difficult to explain for each of them, but for any child, they cannot be less than 13 according to the law. However, children who are 8 or 9, they have profiles. Through the education in schools, we try to tell them that they are not all real on internet. Predators lurk children, and through our educational programs, we are trying to instruct them on how to recognize predators. It's difficult to explain how they need to be protected. They have to, parents must be involved and to talk to their children, that they know that internet is not always safe place, that there are people who don't have good intentions, although sometimes they present themselves as their peers. For the end, one more request, 2 sentences on optimistically taking into account all the problems that we are faced with. Let's give some positive notes to the children who are today with us. I can say on behalf of the Federal Ministry of Interior, we have a number of people. The children should know that there is always somebody there protecting them on internet. And hopefully there will be more people in the future to respond in a better quality way. Mr. Miletic could respond better. I apologize for taking his name. It's improving. We are trying our best. We are working 24/7. We are parents ourselves. We understand children. We are trying to talk to the victims, to children in schools. We have children ambassadors who are teaching together with us in schools. And all of our analyses show that children are best educators to children. We teach educators, educators teach children who teach children, to pass the message on to them. Have a safe trip, a good time on the conference, and next time we'll see each other live. Thank you. One applause for Sasha, who dedicated his time. We are approaching the end of the panel. Mr. Mandic, just like in last panel, what could be your first next step after today? Our young conference participant asked the question, although Duška mentioned the importance of the SOS phone line 24/7. And just to have that in mind, although Duška has answered that question, but we want to include that in the conclusions. Just briefly, to mention an important process that is going on right now in Bosnia and Herzegovina that was initiated 2 years ago. I'm primarily here to present to children and other participants where we're at as the country in terms of fight against domestic violence, gender violence, and violence against children, because these are some of the topics of the conference. As the signatory of the convention and member of the Convention of Violence Against Women and Children, when we signed it 30 years ago, we are committed to changing and amending our legislation with these standards. And few years, the experts from the Council of Europe did an analysis in detail of our capacities to respond appropriately on domestic violence. I'm emphasizing domestic violence because it does include violence against children. As a result, by the end of last year, we got some recommendations that we adopted, and we made them bounding for our country to implement it within a 2 years period. A huge number of recommendations on any measures, including institutionals, that a state needs to take into account.
A lot of work that needs to be done by various levels of authorities in the next 2 years with respect to the emergency recommendations, 19 of them. I had to make this introduction because there are a number of recommendations that concern protection of children as victims of domestic violence and gender-based violence. And the same group of experts to look at the digital violence. Another legislative measure that is awaiting us in future is the recommendation by the same committee of experts of Council of Europe that had issued the first recommendation concerning prevention of digital violence. The well-known Grevio Committee issued the first mandatory recommendation for the members of Council of Europe, saying that all forms of violence that happen in real life are the same in digital space, and the responses need to be tailored in the same way. About the Grevio recommendations against digital violence and domestic violence, I'd like to mention one important thing. I've been warned we need to conclude. It's about being explicitly written, since some of the participants here already mentioned that children as witnesses of domestic violence are automatically victims. And that's why all the legislative and judicial measures have to be taken. Our next step is, well, we have produced an action plan that we will share with all the competent institutions in 7 days and then start working on it. Jasna? Although you've been shortening my time all the time, I will try to be very brief, very specific, very concrete, what has been done already and what will be done by the end of this school year. We already have some dates in mind, well, specific dates. In RS, the program of implementation of modernization of curriculum has already started by introducing the healthy lifestyles. The same is happening in the Federation. However, Federation is lagging behind at RS because of the lack of conflict of competences. I've been given this as an assignment in my mandate. Our objective and our aim is to introduce the subject of media literacy as a mandatory subject in primary and secondary schools in the Federation and hopefully in the whole country. I hope that the colleagues from Republika Srpska will recognize the importance of this. This is very important. We cannot move forward without it. It is a waste of time to talk about reform without the essential reform. There is a big problem with the educational system, and we need to make this reform leap forward. We need functional skills and knowledge, competences, not only communicational, but social. Children need to be taught how to live in the society of today. facing the challenges of today. These challenges are getting harder and harder, and there will be more and more of them. Theoretical knowledge is completely obsolete. Of course, they are necessary, but we must find a way to connect theoretical knowledge with practical knowledge to ensure employment of these children and make it possible to them to be contributing members of the society. Coordination and cooperation must not be just words. We really need to work together, and we need on finding these solutions. I wouldn't hold you up, but it's important because these children have traveled back to Zenica and Tuzla. I will use the opportunity to appeal on the authorities in Bosnia and Herzegovina to pass the law on the registry of individuals who were convicted on sexual abuse of children, so that the protection of children will be at the same level in the whole country. Ms. Poturkovic, I hope that in the nearest future, the Federation Ministry of Labor and Social Policy will adopt a program that we've been preparing with the OSCE on special training of people working in centers for social work or social welfare centers regarding the domestic violence. And I invite the children. Some children may not have the opportunity to report the violence to the police, but they can always report it to their teacher, home class teacher, somebody close, so that they have the legal obligation to pass it on to the police and centers for social work. I think this is very important that you share this information with your peers. Milica, I am breaking the rules now. Microphone is not on. I think everybody heard me in this building when I wanted to use a toilet. The toilet for people with disabilities located at the ground floor, but it's been turned into a storage. I'm saying this not because I'm trying to criticize. I just want to send out a message. Everything that we talked about today should not be treated like that toilet, like turned into a storage and forgotten somewhere in the background. Let's use what we have and let's use it the way it should be used. I repeat, the toilet for persons with disabilities is a storage now. Our laws should not have the same fate. Let's use them properly. Well, thank you. This was excellent. Thank you to you. And please take your seats so that we can wrap up this conference. Article 12 of the Convention on the Rights of the Child is respecting the views of the children. Children has the right to express their opinion freely and has the right to have that opinion taken into consideration in procedures concerning the child. Well, we'll have some conclusions to draw from this, and our young team will do that. In the 4 sessions, they presented the key problems and challenges of the right to life without violence. So the team, please do come out and let's finish this the way we started. We have 2 microphones here. Sumaya, Amar, Imran, Medina, Omer. We invite the state level to take all the activities to establish a single helpline for the children victims of violence that will become part of the system, financially sustainable and accessible 24 hours 7. We invite entity and cantonal governments and government of Brčko district to adopt and implement a law on prohibition of corporal punishment in all communities, including punishing the adults who accept or agree to juvenile marriages. We invite the governments at all levels to continuously report to the legislator on all forms of violence against children and planned and implemented activities aimed at prevention of violence amongst children and against children. We invite all the levels of authority to collect the data on violence against children in a systematic way. Just checking what else is written. Without appropriate, without adequate data, read it, don't worry. Don't have to just say it if you have it on paper. We invite all the levels of government to systematically collect data on violence against children, because without appropriate data, it's impossible to design a systematic solution that would be appropriate for the needs and be in the best interest of the child. Well, you did it. Great job. The paper is your helper. We invite you to improve the system of child protection in cases of violence by ensuring better coordination amongst competent bodies, invest in experts for protection of children and increasing their numbers, especially trained and sensitized to work with children victims of violence so that not a single sector is the weakest link. We invite all the levels of government to take active part and to actively include children in all the decisions, not without children about children. We invite all the representatives of legislative powers at all levels in Bosnia and Herzegovina to be active partners in supporting preparation and implementation of sessions on the topics of human rights, on the obligations that stem from the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and providing better life to children and life without violence. I hope we established in this conference a two-way communication, and that in future we'll be meeting at least twice a year to talk about the rights of the child. And special applause for Sheriff, because he was really worried. But you were excellent, all of you. But since this is a parliament, before we leave this place, while we still have the children here, let's see the hands up of those who will support their conclusions and share them with their colleagues and bosses, superiors, caucuses, working bodies, and wherever they work, and with their families. And this applies to you in schools. Let's see those hands. Okay, thank you very much. But before you leave, I'm supposed to say something big, but I will tell you only what Milica said just now. Let's not, we do have all kinds of needs. We need toilets and we need storage rooms, but let's not turn one into another. Let's make this country as good for its people as possible. Anna, oh, I won't forget it. And if you have time, please join us for refreshments in the Hotel Holiday, a coffee shop inn. If you have time, do join us. And now, very seriously, we'll ask UNICEF to see when can we expect a next meeting. Since we mentioned some deadlines, let's see how far did we get where we are now. One photo, family photo. Those of you who want to be in it.